Well, we're super excited, and funnily enough, we're going to talk to Bree about her journey as a creator capitalist, especially now as she's taken over as kind of head of ops for all of our stuff. And we are grateful for your willingness to push our native analog wheelchairs around a little bit further, and hopefully, to be fair to us, Christopher and I, we've taken our wheelchairs apart this year. We put them back together, and there's a little engine on the back of it. It says AI, and we're hopefully zooming around much farther.
We've gone from manual wheelchairs to e-wheelchairs.
That's right. Autonomous wheelchairs. That's the future.
The problem is I don't know how to turn them on, but that's a whole other. Actually, you joke about that. So I just got a new e-bike, right? So we bought the first generation of electric bikes during COVID. And so it's been several years, of course. So maybe now it's time to upgrade, and they've gotten a lot better and blah, 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 blah. So one of my friends who has a more technical brain did all this research to find the ultimate super ding dong e-bikes for two, so that, Carrie and I can be on them together, because for whatever reason, she likes that. So anyway, he found these things are unbelievable. They're powerful. They've got great tires. They're comfortable, incredible. But the problem? I don't know how to turn the fucking thing on. Really. I had to look it up on YouTube, how to turn the fucking bike on, and then the settings and the this and the that. And it's we're now at a point where you have to have technology. Your phone has to be integrated with your bike. That's where we're at.
Well, if it makes you feel any better,
or you can't figure out how to turn it on.
I got a scooter a few summers ago, had never ridden a motorcycle, never ridden a scooter. I go to get it from Facebook Marketplace, had to YouTube it beforehand on how to turn a scooter on and how to steer it so I could get it all the way home. It worked. YouTube provided for me, but I didn't die on that scooter. It did break down at one point.
We're at a point where you buy a basic analog device that we all understand and has worked the same for generations, and now you get on it and you can't figure out how to work it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll say as the only person on the pod who has kids and who went through hey, my risk profile changed, I will just ask my brother Christopher and my sister Bree, please be safe on your motorized devices, or if you're up in the air flying, please no accidents, and be very, very cautious. So
that's the goal. Here for a good time, here for a long time.
Perfect. Well, now that's how you and Kat met, right?
Correct. Yep. Paragliding.
Can you tell us about that origin story, and don't tell us scary stories. We want everybody, as you said, be here for a good time and a long time. So
no scary stories, no broken bones. So we're good to go there. But Kat and I met paragliding in Salt Lake. I lived in Salt Lake for close to 5 years, so we're both in the community there. And all the girls, there's few of us ladies in the paragliding community, so we're
what's the
close. Mix? I want to say the data is either 9% or 10% female in the United States for paragliding. Mm-hmm. Registered, so there could be more people who aren't registered, but approximately.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, small population of girls, but we had a close, tight-knit friend group, and so Kat and I actually.
We see most women. Mm-hmm. Most women can do the math, which is jumping off a perfectly good mountain with nothing more than a kite. Generally not a good idea. Dudes love it. So what kind of women love to jump off a perfectly good mountain without a device that has any kind of a engine on it?
That's a good question. I think it's the girls that get bored. That's the type, I would say, or at least want multi-passionate endeavors, want more than just the commodities. This seems to be the norm.
Well, I imagine it's not the first time you've done anything kind of risk-taking like this. Is that also true? Or
no, I mean, I've definitely traveled a bunch, and so a lot of people will say, well, if you're a solo female traveler, that's a pretty big risk. And, I have opinions about that. It's not always as dangerous as people say it is. But that was kind of my first I ski and I bike and I dive and I do all of those things. But that was my first air sport endeavor, was getting into paragliding. And now I have no desire to base jump, no desire to skydive. They're so different. And I have no desire. It's a whole other world in those sports.
Well, I think that makes me feel better, but yes, I'll take your word for it. So
Never say never, but
I'm
right
much more
now.
I'm much more comfortable with the scuba diving, frankly.
Scuba diving's kind of scary sometimes.
I don't know. I've been
Compared
on
to
a lot of
paragliding.
dives, and I've had a few spooky things happen. But the interesting thing about diving, and maybe you'll tell us it's the same with flying, but the interesting thing about diving is if you follow your training, even when something quote unquote bad happens, at least I always feel like I know what to do.
Yeah.
Paragliding's the same. Yep.
We'll have to see. Like, I'm much more comfortable in the water, to your point, Christopher. But like, I mean, you do some of these other things that Bree does. But like, if it's my scariest experience in the water was not scuba diving. It was with this lady, Ocean Ramsey. She's the famous diver who is on Deep Blue, the 25-foot great white, and she's holding the dorsal fin swimming along. So she runs this Haleiwa experience on Oahu, where you can go out and you go on the boat, you hang off the boat, she'll take you one at a time, and there's dozens of mostly Galapagos sharks, like and you can't see the bottom and all that. And then I brought my daughter, who was 17, 18 at the time, because I'd done it once with my brother. It's like, oh, it was super fun. They don't get that close to you. And she's there. We have a good time. She's get back in the boat. And then I noticed the sharks that are normally about 20 feet below, they all disappear. And I'm like, what's going on? And I look, and then there's a 10-foot tiger coming towards us. And then the Ocean and her crew, they're all swimming towards her and all excited and happy. And I'm like, okay, they clearly know who she is and have interacted with her before and are safe. And then I'm like, well, this is cool, but I'm glad my daughter's in the boat. And I look up and she's getting back in the water. So like, I don't know what it is with, this risk taking, but apparently you need to have a little bit of crazy to join the pirate ship, which is why you're here now. So you guys met then, and then what were you running your web design business at the time, or what were you doing when you guys met?
So when I had kind of briefly started it, but I was in a full-time nonprofit role doing marketing and administrative work. And I had a combo hybrid role between them. And then I actually got fired from that role. And that was, I had my web design business going on already. So I went full-time. I got pushed off. Instead of my runway was a jump, it was not casual, and got pushed off into it. And that was when I started. At the same time, I started a nonprofit of my own because I was so involved in depth in that world. And that was when, probably about 6 months later, Kat was like, hey, you want to join the pirate ship? And I was like, sure do. So that was where we were when I met.
Well, you're in good company. I think it would be Rafi Mohammed also got a severance to launch his own career and this and that. And I think Joe, if I think you remember correctly, he took a severance from IBM to do that as well too. So you're in good stead there. So
Yep. That's what I hear.
Yeah. So wait, so you were doing the
getting
nonprofit.
Fired is really one of the best things that could ever happen to you. I've been fired all kinds of times.
It was
And it's
I
interesting.
was so burnt out. I was so done with that job. It should have happened probably months sooner, but I couldn't pull the plug on myself to do it. So,
And Bree, when you got fired, was it upsetting, or what did it feel like to get fired?
I was so relieved.
Yeah.
Very, very relieved. It was obviously sad. Like, that day was not fun, but the immediate emotion was like, oh, thank goodness I'm done with that. Thank goodness.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's a non-obvious emotion sometimes, right?
Yeah.
As you're describing. So, okay. So
there's no point being somewhere where they don't want you.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Get out as quickly as possible.
And so 6-ish months, maybe a little bit longer, it was probably closer to 8 or 9 months, I had applied for a promotion within the role for a job I was already doing. And they passed me up and hired someone externally. And so I spent the next 6 months training this person on how to do everything I was already doing and then still do a lot of the work. And so that was like the end. Like, I checked out after that once they didn't give me the promotion for a role I was already doing.
yeah.
Brutal.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Companies are dumb things to love. I have a buddy who works at one of the Mag 7. He's been there, I forget exactly how long, but plus or minus 15 years. He's a very senior engineering leader, incredible career. He's been involved with some of the most advanced things that if I mentioned, you would know those things. And he was up for this promotion. They told him he was going to get the promotion. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, he was going to leave and join another Mag 7 company. And they threw all this money at him. And they said, hey, listen, hold on, because your boss is going to quit in the next 2 years and you're going to get the job. So that's exactly what he did. And guess what they did? They didn't give him the fucking job. And they hired somebody from the outside, and he got blindsided by the whole thing. So he's in the process of leaving to join OpenAI right now. And so, those of us who are missionaries, those of us who are committed to not just our careers, but producing legendary results, designing the categories, the companies, and the products and the offerings of the future, can be very exciting to be in these roles at these major corporations.
Yeah.
And companies are dumb things to love.
I think that's a well put. And so did those experiences directly lead you to start your own web design firm, Bree?
So I've been kind of freelancing ever since I turned 17. So I had been doing a lot of things on the side. Before I went and worked for that nonprofit, I was working in wilderness therapy. I've gone on a lot of side quests. And so I have all this different
What is wilderness therapy? Just so I understand it.
So my role, I was working with all teenage boys ages 13 to 17, and they were essentially in an intervention that their parents would send them to for misbehavior in high school. And they would come out to the wilderness for 8 to 12 weeks in Utah, in the Utah desert. And we would teach them different tactics of like, here's how you express your feelings. Here's how you have discipline. Here's how like this works and that works. And they would go through that intervention progress before returning home or going on to another therapeutic school.
Wow.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think that, first of all, that's legendary. Second of all, I think the destruction or the diminishing of scouting, certainly here in North America, is a tragedy. And I don't know what it's like, Bree, to be a young woman, but I certainly know what it's like to be a young man. And I think every young man should go off and do an Outward Bound or something like that when they're teenagers. Figure out how to handle yourself outside on a mountain, learn to backcountry ski, learn to hike, go out and do multi-day adventures, learn to be on a team where the weakest link can get you killed, all of those great skills. It's very affirming for men and maybe for women to feel like I can handle myself no matter what. And a great place to learn that is in the woods. And like my friend Tim Rhodes says, he's getting the goods in the woods. And there's nothing better than getting the goods in the woods.
Oh, I agree. All my goods are in the woods.
So it sounds like side quest after side quest leading to freelance work. And then
so in that role, everyone always commented like, oh, you're really good at design. Like you're really good at making things look good. And so I started getting all these tasks that were very design oriented. And I had known that from previous freelancing, from being in college. I wanted to have a graphic design degree, but I did a lot of my college courses in high school. So when I got to college, I had to choose a major very quickly, and I wasn't ready to apply to a graphic design or computer science type of degree at the time. So I couldn't do that. And otherwise, I'd be in college for a lot longer, more money, debt, all of that good stuff. So I chose a different path. And so, anyways, all these different experiences kept having people telling me, hey, you're really good at this type of thing. So
and then
what
what were they? Was it just? I want to double click on that. So you were getting positive feedback, and they were saying you're really good at this. What can you think of someone very specifically, not just saying that you were good at it, but did they get an outcome out of it, or like beyond just the feedback? Why did they go out of their way to tell you that?
Specifically, my old boss, the same one that fired me, unfortunately, but she was one of the big ones that came in, was like, hey, you should do all these things. And because I stepped into this role that was more than they were anticipating, it led to our first $1 million fundraising event, not just in the year, but a 3-day event.
Okay. So wait. So, okay. This companies are dumb things to love. Bosses are complicated as well too. Yeah. But it sounds okay. You did something, and it led to $1 million of donations coming to. And was that atypical? Just give us a feel for how different of an outcome was that.
No, typical was probably 500,000, give or take a few. somewhere in that realm.
So you doubled the average outcome,
Mm-hmm.
and then just so that we can really kind of tease apart your superpower, because as we define superpower, it's outcomes you do for others, which is very much what you're describing here, right? How did your design and your graphic magic lead to somebody giving double what they would normally do? Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's multi-layered because I had a huge part in the beginning process. So kind of the teasing aspect of like, here's what these 3 days are going to look like. Here are the goals. Here's going to be who's in the room. There's like this relational community aspect where I was the right-hand man to be like, here's who we need to talk to. Here's what we need to say. Here's how it flows throughout these 3 days to lead to an emotional impact. Because this is a condensed period of time, right? It's not just over the course of the year. The year donations were much larger, but those 3 days were absolutely key to doing it. And so part of also my superpowers, I can wear so many different hats, and being able to help anybody in the team exemplify and amplify what they were doing on those 3 days led to even bigger things to happen in their roles too.
Wow. So the ability to be a mixed martial artist and kind of, punch, kick, and wrestle all at the same time, the ability to do it in a timely deadline is hanging over your head fashion. And then that got whoever the donor was at the end to say, wow, this is amazing. And therefore I'm going to give twice as much. And that validation led you to understand, oh, I do have a superpower. It is about the outcomes I deliver for others. And maybe if I can get somebody else to go from $500,000 to $1 million, if I can keep doing that, then some of that's going to come my way, sounds like.
And I'm petty. So after I got fired, I went back the next year. I was like, how much did they raise this year? Didn't reach $1 million. They only reached 700,000. Just had
so
to
an honor.
This is what, the category science people and me would say, that sounds like a line. You got 2 data points, and there's, what was that great SNL skit, Christopher, with Dana Carvey? Like when he's doing George Bush, he's like, all I know is before Bush, wall. After Bush, no wall. Legacy secured, right? So you have that version of it yourself.
Exactly.
Now, Bree, safe to say you're not an older person, yes?
Correct. Yep.
Safe to say you're a younger person?
Yep. I'll be
Safe
27 soon.
27.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
not quite.
great.
I'm still in the 26.
Yeah. Okay. 26 now, 27 soon. Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Yes.
I was told once by my father that you should never ask a woman that women only have 2 ages, below 21 and above 21. But
my grandmother used to always say she was 29. Before she was 29, she was 29. After 29, 29 forever.
Correct. Okay. And so I have a lot of younger folks in my life. I know Eddie does as well, many of whom I love very much, and some of whom are very much struggling, where we're in a situation now where kids are getting out of college. And unless you're in a very specific field that you've chosen, medicine or engineering or architecture or what have you, if you don't get a degree where there's a clear next step to a career, then at least in my world, many of the younger folks I know are lost. And they can't figure out, A, what is my superpower? That is to say, the thing that makes me different in a valuable way. That's what a superpower ultimately is, right? Something that makes you different, that makes you stand out, that makes you unique, that is highly valuable to others. That's your superpower. That's your different. And so they have a hard time figuring that out because they didn't figure it out in school. And they have a hard time figuring out how they would get a job with that different. And so they're literally stuck, like working at Chipotle or in the mall. And there seems for them to be no way to bridge from I have a degree, which is sort of useful, but maybe not super useful, but kind of useful, but at least it shows I'm not a moron. But it's not in nursing or something with a clear path. You follow me? And they don't know how to get started. And so it's like, well, am I going to work at the mall or am I going to work in a restaurant? Or they're stuck because they can't figure out how to break into the working world, the corporate world. What advice would you have for those young folks who are stuck there?
Well, my first 2 thoughts, one is this is a conversation my dad and I have frequently. A master's degree is the new 4-year degree. It's hard to take a degree and go somewhere without a master's if you're relying on a degree to get you far in life. The second thing, socialize. I think it's such a, I mean, we talk about the loneliness epidemic all of the time in different groups of people. Even once you're out of college and you're in these environments where it's so easy to make friends because you're put together with people who have same interests, and you go out into the world and you can't find people with the same interests because whether you have no hobbies, you sit on the couch, whatever it is, that's such a huge thing. Because even part of my superpower is my friends telling me, hey, you're really good at the legwork. And so listening to these signals that people are giving me over and over again that tend to integrate over every single factor of my life isn't possible without a community and socialization. And that's where I am.
But what if you don't have that? I mean, I know young people that graduate or have graduated, and they have what you might call casual friends they've made, but they don't have real close friends. And they're stuck in this, they can't get hired. They've got no experience. And even though we're roughly at 4% unemployment, which is for all practical purposes, zero unemployment, at 4% unemployment, basically everybody who wants a job has a job. And yet, if you're a Gen Zer with a degree like the one I'm describing, which is maybe a good degree, but it doesn't lead to a particular profession, they don't know how to make the jump, and they can't make the jump. That, at least that's what they tell me.
It's all courage. You got to have the courage to go try something new and put yourself out there. And I think the same is true in business. If you want to make it in business, you have to go try something new. You have to go dance at the bar on a Thursday night and say hello to a few people. And it takes courage to go out there and be like, I don't know anybody here. Show up to some group. And then those connections tend to lead to work sometimes, a lot of the time, not always. But it takes courage in order to go out and do those things. And it takes curiosity too. That's the other big thing, is without curiosity, there's no courage.
But it seems like you have both. It's an interesting formula because you're basically describing relationship capital, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that you need courage and curiosity to create the relationship capital. And I'll add another one of just kind of splash of missionariness. I don't know how to describe it, Bree, but your willingness to help with wilderness therapy, it stems from your wanting to help people in general. And so if you are willing to help, you have courage and you have curiosity, pretty easy to build relationships with people like a Katrina who's going to say, hey, I have this opportunity for you. Have you thought about that? And, it does seem like, certainly relationship capital can cut both ways, as you mentioned with your boss, right? Good and the bad and with it and whatnot. But I think you're describing an important formula for folks. As I don't really know where you were in the whole social media, this and that, but if you've kind of lived your life as a native digital, you're not always going to know how to talk to a stranger, right? And so it seems like you had that either growing up or just something kicked in for you to be the ability to want to help, be curious, and have the guts to strike up a conversation with a couple of old dudes like us and stuff. So
Exactly.
So at some level, so you have this kind of signal, you have this outcome, ability to deliver outcomes through web design, and you have an eye and a work ethic for it. You are, have a shift and a pivot in your career, out of this nonprofit world. You have a couple of side quests and you have this relationship capital. So at what point did you say, I'm going to hang up my own shingle versus look for another job, or how did that happen?
So I got fired and I also got denied unemployment. So I was kind of like, okay, I was applying to jobs for probably, I want to say 6 weeks, had several interviews. Every interview I had, I was miserable in because I just did not want to actually be in a job. So I had enough going with my web design business where I was like, okay, I can either keep being miserable doing these interviews or I can go all in on the web design thing and see where it takes me. I have some runway. I have a deadline of this is when my savings runs out. Let's go for it and let's see what happens. And so that's what I did. And then I hit the end of the savings. I'm getting close. I'm kind of like, okay, now what do I do? And this is where that courage comes into play because I was like, okay, I I got to do something. And I'm on social media. I started posting a lot. I got in front of Chris Burkhardt, who is one of the best photographers out there, arguably one of the biggest. And because I got in front of Chris Burkhardt and had conversations with him, that catapulted my business light years from what it was in the past. And so I had made the most amount of money I'd probably ever made in my life.
Hold on. Let me interrupt
in
you,
like
Bree, if I can.
6 months. Yeah.
How did you get in touch with this legendary photographer who ended up becoming an Archimedes for you, somebody who could catapult you forward?
I made a video on social media, essentially putting his website on blast, ranting about how horrible it was for somebody that had such a big following. And I posted that video.
So you did a video talking about how shitty Chris is, this legendary photographer that everybody loves. You tore his website apart.
Absolutely. Yep. It was completely 180 from anything else I had ever talked about.
And this guy's probably a guy who hears nothing or mostly very positive stuff because everybody thinks he's the greatest. Yes?
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's trying to be on his good side, wants to be in his realm.
So you put this video, and I assume you were specific in saying this part here sucks and this is why and so forth and so on?
Yeah, it was like probably 4 minutes of me just saying this is what I would change to this, and I can't believe it's this terrible.
And then what happened?
He reposted it to his over 1 million followers, and that generated
And what did he say in the repost?
He said, love getting some critical feedback every now and then. He really enjoyed someone essentially tearing him apart.
Ah. Mm-hmm. Now, why do you think that was true? Why didn't Chris think you were an asshole?
I mean, I was kind about it.
So you were a nice asshole.
Yes, exactly. Precisely. But I was kind about it, and it was useful information. It wasn't just like, oh, this is trash, bummer, good luck. It was like, this is what I would do differently, and this is how it would help. It was totally missionary work.
So you posted that. He reposted it and said something to the effect of, I like getting this harsh feedback, or some words to that effect, yes?
Yeah, something like that.
And then what happened?
Surge of leads. I probably within a 2-week period had 20 plus leads from different people who were interested in working with me.
Sounds like that was an amazing lightning strike.
Yeah. Yep.
Now,
and I kept going afterwards too.
What do you mean you kept going?
I kept making videos. I kept sharing like the same things. And then I went after Jimmy Chin and like kept going on these different big names where I was like, this is good, this is bad, this is what I would do differently, and here's why I would do that.
Wow.
Yep.
I will say, Christopher, Bree has very, very nicely said, she's brought up my own website, and she was not mean about it, but just enough to say, I need to update that.
Maybe we could do a little better, Eduardo.
Probably. So I know, like, Bree has, you have a good deal of discernment as much as you have courage around that. Did any of those other folks kind of respond, or like how did was it a repeatable playbook for you?
Not everyone after that responded. There were some more smaller names in the space that did respond to it, and so it was kind of like, okay, everyone's looking towards this example of Chris is the big guy out there doing it, and here are these smaller, similar people who are interested in what I'm saying. So it's repeatable on a smaller scale, but that smaller scale was also good because they're actually more likely going to see the video or going to see some type of feedback they relate to. And that's still to this day, 2 years, 3 years later since that happened, people come up, hey, I remember you used to make these videos where you were ranting about these things. Like, do you have some advice on how I could like maybe get the same outcome for myself? To this day, I got a message on Friday of someone asking me that.
Okay. We will definitely need to write a mini book or a founder's post about this for sure. So go grab all your best videos with that.
Yeah.
The thing that you did, and when I share this with young people, some of them get mad at me. You made yourself undeniable.
Mm-hmm. It was hard to ignore what I had posted.
Yes. And the other thing that you did in making yourself undeniable was you did it in a way that clearly demonstrated the value of your value. And I talk to young people who say, well, I've emailed my resume to 20 companies in the last week, and I haven't even got a call, nothing back. As if applying for jobs off of websites or job sites is the way to get a job. You made yourself undeniable. And so the issue really is do something legendary, right?
Yep.
Force them to deal with you.
Yeah.
Well, you were brutally honest and radically courageous at the same time. I mean, it's very
in
much
a way that demonstrated massive value.
Yes. In your superpower. That's the other bit. Like sometimes the strike is non-related to anything and stuff, but like you had confidence about your outcomes and your superpower. You did a strike that was directly about that. You made yourself undeniable, as Christopher said, and you had this. I can't wait to see what one of these look like, because I imagine you tell us like the mix of sugar and the spoonful of sugar is I don't imagine your body language or your voice is mad or angry, but the word you're probably nicely saying some very pointed things. Is that the formula you use basically, or?
Yeah, and I started off the video being like how much of a fan I was of Chris Burkhardt.
There we
also.
go.
Like that was the key thing that hooked people in. And then I was like, but how is this the reality of how, because I love Chris Burkhardt, how is this what's being shown in the example set forth?
So you were a super consumer in effect.
Yeah.
And it's what you demonstrated is exactly right, is that people think, super consumer strategy is all kumbaya and, happy joy. No. They love you the most, and they are the most critical people at the same time, because they want you to do better.
Yeah, they have the best advice on how to move 100%. Forward, because they want to know how to consume more.
Okay, so so find your signal about your superpower, do a strike in an undeniable way for whom within your lane of superpowerness, for someone that you are a super consumer of, brutally honest, radically courageous, but ultimately you are trying to help them get to an outcome. And you put it in a way where everyone could watch you do it, and and you just need one Archimedes, as you were describing stuff, yep. Right? So okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so now are you off into the races? You got dozens of leads. And what happens next?
Yeah, dozens of leads. I probably generated the most amount of income I had ever made in my life in a period of 4 to 6 months, and
that must have felt so good.
It felt phenomenal. I was riding a high for the 6 months. But then afterwards, I got a little burnt out, because as I learned, Chris Burkhardt was not my ideal person that I wanted to work with, like going forward. So it was a very big learning lesson on the relationships I want to have and who I'm working with. So some of the relationships it brought in burnt me out over the following 6 months. In that same period, I hired a few advisors, because I was like, whoa, this surge of this income and revenue, how do I keep going? How do I scale? Like, let's double down on all this. And was talking to people who are like, wow, this is amazing, and just kind of got amplified. So I invested all this money to keep it going, and then furthered kind of this burnout period of time.
Okay, so you were burnt out. So you had the leads, not quite like. Can you say more about like wasn't your ideal client? Like what did that mean?
It was the working relationship of people overvaluing my time, or not. That's probably not quite I was getting way too much communication, doing way too many revisions. People were just they weren't being mean, but it wasn't this valuable working relationship for myself that lit me up and made me want to do more.
So it was at some level, the leads were generated because of your superpower, and yet the work that was being done was back to, in the land of, are you being paid for time, deliverables, or outcomes? Went back to time, and that's always going to be unsustainable, because I can totally understand that. So then, how did you kind of navigate that? So it sounds like your strategy was to get some advice. So tell us about that. Like, so you got leads in a way that was burning you out, because they weren't paying you for your superpower, they were paying you for time. And then so how did you get to, let me reach out for help, or what was that kind of thought process like?
Part of it was organic. Part of it, these people came into my life and I was looking to grow. They were offering something that really resonated with me. And so a lot of it was kind of this organic progression of hiring advisors essentially. And I, as society would tell me, I was at the right place in time. I had made the right amount of money now that it's time to hire to keep going. And so that was like the normal progression for somebody to do. And there was no one sitting there. Like, I've said, what I really appreciate about the Category Design Academy is we will actually tell you no if you are not ready. And I had met some advisors that nobody ever talked about when to say no or how to make the right decision. The no sell essentially was never, that wasn't in my mind. That wasn't a part of my quiver of expertise and skill sets. And so these people came in, I was like, oh, this makes sense because this is what everybody tells me is the next step to grow to a bigger business, to make more money. Like, I have to invest a certain amount of money to make more money. And that was my logic behind it. And it was an over investment for where I was actually at with the information I have now.
Okay. And then were they positioning themselves as kind of, what kind of advisors were they calling themselves, out of curiosity? Like,
Coaches is the common word.
and and coaches to help you grow your business generically, coaches on a specific lane or technique or whatever and stuff. So
They were primarily like integrative coaches who looked at your personal life and your professional life to blend them well so that they went hand in hand with one another.
oh, so not quite a life coach, not quite a business coach, somewhere in between.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Lifestyle coach maybe is the
Lifestyle
right,
coach.
but no one really puts the right languaging to what these folks are. They're not therapists. They're a different lane, but they're like kind of therapists, but they're business people. They're like this strange commodity of a lot of different things.
Okay. Okay. And it sounds like you didn't just kind of get one, you got several.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
got
right?
two. Mm-hmm.
Two. Okay. Okay. And then what just kind of whatever you're comfortable sharing, like, what was that like? What was the give to get? Like, what were you paying them? What were they giving back to you? And at what point were you like, is this working or not working?
For one of them, I spent, I think, just under 25 grand for a year of work together.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And how are they charging you? Like, on a monthly basis or?
Monthly basis, monthly retainer.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that amount made a lot of sense when I was making all that money. And part of how I also started doing this is I invested, had a pretty big outcome, and I was like, oh, it's going to keep going. And
Wait. Okay.
then it
So
went
the
down.
early advice did work then, some of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
The early
Tell us about
advice
that.
did. I think part of it is a personal thing where it's like, oh, I went and invested in doing these things. I'm going to make sure I get an ROI. And then went and took the agency. Like, this is a two-way street. Like, I totally see that. And so I took the agency to get an ROI. And then I put too much of my trust in too much of my own agency into their advice, where I didn't have the discernment at the time to be like, that's advice I'm taking and that's advice I'm not taking. And I handed over all that power, if you will, to somebody else. And then it went downhill.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So let's say you were paying, I don't know, $2,000 a month, give or take, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were giving you integrative advice, like, and give us an, like, the best advice they ever gave you and what you got out of it, and the worst advice looked like what? Just out of curiosity.
There are a couple big things. The biggest one was that I had to put on my own oxygen mask before putting on someone else's oxygen mask, as if you're on a plane, right? They tell you that before you take off. And part of that is I had just come from launching a nonprofit, seeing a lot of success in that nonprofit, putting a lot of energy in it, and it draining me. And then I wasn't making money for myself. So that was kind of one of the biggest of how do you balance being a missionary where you still make a very big impact, but you're not that classic, like, oh, I work in a nonprofit, I make no money because I'm out there helping and I'm giving back, like getting rid of that old story that I've held for a really long part of my life.
Okay, wait. So just so I understand it, you have your web design firm and you have a nonprofit at the same time going. Okay. And then so the advice was to pull back from the nonprofit. Was that the advice?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Okay. And then, so that's kind of addition by subtraction, which makes sense, right? Kind of focus on that. Was there any kind of advice they gave you specifically to help you grow the web design business as well?
Nothing to this day that I still hold on to.
Okay. So here's what's interesting is that it sounds like it's in the life business, more on the life side and less on the business side with
Yeah.
it. So, okay.
Yep.
So it sounds like there's a bit of a lesson learned around the category of advisor that you bring on, like, because you probably, I mean, I assume, you either get to a point where your business is so successful, you have to cut off time going to the nonprofit or something else with it. But like, it sounds like, you were paying them a lot for advice that was kind of, I don't want to whatever, but like in the obvious camp versus the non-obvious kind of aha and insight. Is that a fair way to label it? Or
Yeah, and it was advice also that worked really well for them, and not so much was something that was repeatable.
Okay. Okay. So then that was an early kind of win. What was the worst advice you got?
The worst advice, and I don't think it was bad. I think it was bad advice for me, was how to run a sales call, and also I think having sales calls.
Tell us more about that.
So, one thing that's always been on my mind about any type of business is, why do you have to have a sales call? Why do you have to spend an hour, hour and a half talking to someone? And most people's conversion rates from a sales call into an actual client, very small. And so I've always questioned, why in the world am I doing this? But everyone says you got to have a sales call, you got to do this. And so, anyways, I was really pushed to keep doing sales calls, and the structure of them, I struggle with a lot of manipulative marketing. There's so much out there. And so when I'm in marketing and it feels manipulative, can't do it. Want nothing to do with it. I'd rather not sell anybody and make $0 before I do that.
Yeah.
And so the way she kind of walked me through how to do a sales call just did not work for me. It was very structured. It was very like, here's what you do, A, B, C, D. And then you lead them into this. And like, if they have a sales objection, this is what you do. And all that stuff is fine and dandy. That's like pretty classic sales training. And it just did not work for me the way she structured it. And like, even having sales calls, I was like, I am not here to convince anybody. Like, if you're coming off this call, you're like, I don't want to work with you, I don't care. If they want to object, go for it. I want nothing to do with having to deal with sales objections.
Wow. Okay. So then one, the right category of advisor, life versus business, hire a business coach for a business type of a situation. Two is, it's a, for somebody who is an advisor with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Right. And so there are advisors that do bespoke work, and there are advisors that do just the one thing. And if you don't fit into it, then you're kind of out of luck with it, right? And so that's the second bit of it. Because and what ended up happening, sounds like, so the advice was bad. You have all these leads. Did you either just not follow the sales advice, or did you follow it and then it wasted the leads? Like, how do we think about what ended up happening for you?
So the sales advice came after all those leads were generated. So it was probably a year after that happened. So it kind of became irrelevant, and it actually made it harder for me to be courageous and be curious when I was going into potential clientele work with people, because of, I didn't want to get on that sales call. So it was hard to go out and put myself out there, because why would I do that if I don't want a sales call?
Yeah. So at some level, it wasn't a good fit, but it also turned you off of the sales call experience itself.
Yeah.
And that vibe probably came through in your body language, and people kind of, and so number one, you were miserable doing it. Number two, it probably didn't work very well.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't I had this whole template, this Google Doc. I would look at my monitor and be following it, and that just wasn't.
And people could probably tell you were doing that. Or
versus
whatever.
If I get on and I'm like, oh, I have all this charisma and all of this stuff, is like, that's when people are, hell yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. Well, and Christopher, we wrote about this, and Bree, you've referenced it in the No Sell Sell, right? It's one of those things where, the premise of a sales call is rejected in the first place, right? And it also goes back to the same, if you sell your product, they think you want their money. If you sell their problem, a variant of that, then they think you want to help, type of a thing. And so it sounds like something very simple like that might have been a better fit for you, kind of not a directions and a turn-by-turn GPS, but compass says go that way, and you'll be fine finding your own way there type of a situation.
Yeah. And I learned so much. Like, I did learn things when I was under these advisors and stuff. And I think there's a big part of it. What we teach in the academy is you need to know when your superpower is important. When do you come into the picture? And as I look back with hindsight and new information, these coaches that I worked with didn't have their understanding of when do I actually serve somebody to generate a massive outcome for them. And that's one of my biggest takeaways of knowing that for myself is like the timing is everything in this.
Yeah. Okay. So
the other thing, Bree, I hear, sorry, Eddie, go ahead.
Yep, go ahead.
The other thing I hear a lot as I kind of reflect on some of the things you're saying, I hear these two components. One is you were backed in a corner. You had no choice. You got fired. You are not eligible for benefits, and you were running out of cash. And there's something about being desperate. I don't know that I want to say it's a condition for success, but it's interesting how often it's present with successful people and companies, right? I mean, I share with people all the time my own story. I got thrown out of school at 18. I had no prospects. Nobody was going to hire me. I was working a manual labor job as an orderly, right? And so for me, entrepreneurship was a way out, not a way up. And so similar to you, right? So there's something fascinating about your ass is jammed in a corner and you have to get a way out. And then the second piece that I find fascinating, as I kind of synthesize a lot of what I think you're saying here, Bree, is you did a lot of reject the premise. A lot of people told you to do X and you gave them the middle finger, whether you realized it at the time or not, and you did something different. So I'd like to sort of, if you could for us, share the importance of A, being backed into a corner or feeling that way, and B, what it was that led you to reject so much of the advice, reject the premise, and chart your own different path.
For A, one other thing I think is really interesting is, well, you're backed into a corner and then the well dries up. As soon as you have all this, I don't know if the right word is abundance, but flourishing, whatever. And like what happens there? Because that was my biggest struggles. I got backed into a corner. I had the path for repeatable success, what people liked, what I knew I was good at. But as soon as the well started drying up of like, I didn't need to be backed into a corner anymore, the well dried up, if that makes sense. And so there's something super interesting. At one point, I was at my hairdresser in Salt Lake and she was like, how did you do it? Like, what's going on here? And I was like, well, I hit a point where failure wasn't an option. And then my backup plan was some job I didn't like going to. So that was what I needed to do. And so there's something about how, well, when you're into it, this is all you got going for you. Like you have nothing left to lose once you're back into a corner. And that's like the same thing that needs to be carried out past that.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like when you're back into the corner, you got nothing left to lose. You already have a healthy risk tolerance. To call out your the photographer you're a super fan of and whatnot. And it sounds like you are aggressive, or if you're going to err, you're going to err on the aggressive side, which is generally good, right? You're going to be proactive about it and everything else. So you reach out for help. Makes sense. Maybe in the wrong category of advisor. And then maybe also the cookie cutter advice not bespoke for you. So that maybe not a good fit. At what point did you say, got to cut this off and stop? Like, how did you kind of, and if I remember from our discussions earlier, like you got to a point where you're like, my P&L's upside down and I have to stop this. Like, how did you kind of rip the Band-Aid off?
To some degree, I didn't. To some degree, I viewed myself as having a struggle with committing and sticking through things for over a year. And so I had made this kind of promise to myself to stick with this coach and keep going. And so I didn't rip the Band-Aid off, which maybe it should have happened. I was contractually tied to it too. And I'm sure there's a loophole, but I was contractually tied to it.
What was the contractual limitation? It was a year that you signed up for or something like that?
Yeah, it was a year.
And then what would have happened if you had said, I'm done after 6 months? Like just becomes a
It wasn't
legal
a,
thing or
I have
whatever.
no idea. It wasn't a thought. I never went back to the contract, but I
Yeah.
had it in my head that I made this promise
Yeah.
to myself or whatever. And I was going to stick through it because whatever path I was on was the path I was meant to be on. And so I didn't ever rip the Band-Aid off.
Okay. But out of curiosity, did you ever give them feedback? Hey man,
Mhm.
your stuff didn't work, or
Yeah.
what'd they say?
It wasn't really ever addressed. It was kind of a shrug of the shoulders of oh, that's interesting. And I probably could have done it sooner, but I did it a little bit later into the contract, and it was never really addressed because I came back and I was like, hey, this didn't work for me. I would have much appreciated this approach, and it was never a conversation after that.
That's too bad, because I know when I remember one time a CMO early in my career told me I recommended something that didn't work. I was ready to quit the career, not my company, the whole industry. I was like, I am a total leech on society, and I need to do something different and stuff. So
Yep.
that's a bummer. That's
Yeah.
a bummer. Okay.
Do you remember that old song, Eddie? Nobody likes me, everybody hates me, I'm gonna eat some worm. Kind of like that, right? You just
That's
feel
how I
like I'm
felt.
completely useless. I
Yeah.
might as well go over here in the corner and eat worms.
100%.
Yep.
By the way, as a side note, if you're one of our 5 dinosaurs, aka chickens, eating worms is a great idea for you.
New diet idea.
New diet. Hey, people are eating bugs.
Yeah.
Might as well
Yep.
try out the worms. I know our chickens love them.
Okay, so so the contract basically comes up essentially is when you hit the escape hatch with it. Okay, and then where did you find yourself? I mean, it sounds like there's a pit in your stomach, kind of gradually growing, and what was the state of your business at the time that you were like, I'm done with the advisors?
When I saw that they weren't making, there was no ROI to anything. There may have been a very small ROI, but there was not anything close to the amount that I had paid, and nothing over, which is obviously what you want. So that was when I hit the point where I was like, I don't want anything to do with this category of what I'm tried and didn't work for me.
Well, and then you had mentioned that some of it you were probably early on funding out of cash flows out of the business, but then some of it you also took some debt on and did it that way. Is that right?
Yep. Got into some debt over that one for sure.
Okay. And it's interesting because that would also be there's a real kind of fascination around, as somebody who's been an advisor for their entire career, there's a real kind of I think we wrote a bit about this, but how to use people. If you tell them hey, I'm debt financing this service, then you would hope that an advisor would feel a certain way about that. Hey, not the greatest thing, because you don't want that to be the line item that puts a client, out of business and whatnot. But did you ever get to the point where you were like, oh, I'm in big trouble? Should I just clear the deck and start over, or I'm going to dig my way out? At some point you were like, I'm in a bit of trouble here. What am I going to do about it?
I have taken the dig my way out approach of it. Okay. And yeah, I've recently gone into the rabbit hole of wonder what would have happened had I not chosen that. But it's too late now. So I have dug myself out of it, and been a big lesson. I've approached it well, this was just a really big lesson I had to learn. And that's that.
So here's another interesting meta thing I hear from you is I hear a lot of responsibility for your own failures and frankly successes. When you talk about the success of fundraising with the nonprofit, I hear a pride of authorship in a good way. Sometimes pride is viewed as negatively, but it can also be very positive when you're proud of yourself, right? And I also hear in your voice, Bree, a tremendous amount of responsibility for the fuck ups, for the debt, for the screw ups, for getting fired, for getting yourself backed into this corner. And it feels like more than ever, people don't want to accept responsibility for their success or their failures. So where is this, what I'm hearing from you as radical self-responsibility and acknowledgement of it, good, the bad, and the ugly, where does that come from?
I think I have this very deep belief that I am on the path I'm supposed to be on. And if I'm following the path I'm supposed to be on, what could possibly go wrong? Or how could this possibly, like, there is no failure if I'm on the path I'm supposed to be on, learning the next thing that's going to get me to the next success. Like, surely all these, like, different things I've learned from running a business over the past few years are going to have a massive and tremendous impact. And I hope I do see an ROI on these things in 3 years from now, or a year or 2 years. And this is like something I can look back on and be like, okay, that was the reason I was on this path right now. Like, I just have this very deep belief I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and to follow through with that. Because everything, as I look back in my past of like, okay, that led to this, which led to this, and that all brings success.
Yeah. So some of this is your upbringing and your own personal values and integrities that you're going to see this through. And
Yeah.
I mean, to for what it's worth, I think our 2 cents would be good on you for that. I mean, it's number one, we have all the world of confidence that you're going to get out of this, and we are here to help you get there too. But two, because it's very obvious, even without our like confidence, is like you have a track record of a superpower, you have a track record of a lightning strike. Basically, you have more wins than losses. I mean, there's a couple of deep ones here, but that's because you swung and you didn't just let the pitch go by. Like you sought out advisors, you try to double down with it. So all the signs are there that you're going to be a massive success with it. And I think, to Christopher's point, what a great example to your peers and to everybody else to be like, look, it sucks to take ownership and accountability of a hole that I kind of got into, but you're going to feel wonderful, I think, coming out of it, number one. But also, the lessons that you are needing, that you're kind of building along the way, like you have your superpower and your outcomes, you have the lightning strikes, so you have all the forward kind of revenue generating sides of an entrepreneur. It's the, as I've learned the hard way, myself, as putting on the CFO hat for Category Pirates, is like managing cash flow, an important thing, managing risk, an important thing. And it's not that you ever want cash flow and risk to be so big that you stop yourself from swinging, but what a great compliment you're going to have of like, hey, you know what, let me be a little more skeptical about XYZ advice or advisors that I get. And then also let's find somebody who A, is going to be more bespoke than cookie cutter, and B, is going to be somebody who feels kind of bad if there's not an outcome. Like, I'm a missionary, I want to work with other missionaries too. And so, I do, I can understand that, hey, what would have been like had I not kind of done the hard thing? But, in essence, what I think some of the jams that we've been having, Bree, is that, on the web design front, the lesson learned is, manage risk, manage cash flow, but also I think you are really on the core thing of web design, and Christopher probably knows more about this than I, but like the clients are both firefighter and arsonist at the same time, right? The clients you need that obviously generate revenue, but they can sure be a pain in the butt when they don't know what they want. And when we were having conversations about kind of my own site, I was like, you know what? I think part of the issue was I don't know what I was looking for, probably looking for too much. And so I think you are on the cusp of creating a POV around web design, which is that what happens when you are great at what you do, but the client has no clue, right? And so that, to me, that central problem of the client just is like, well, how do I figure out what I do, what I want? I can kind of do a monkey see, monkey do. I like that person's site. Let me go get that. And then you do it. And then you realize, well, that's not really working for me. But then I think this whole kind of applying category design to the website business and saying, I'm not the problem, you're the problem. And
Yes.
let me help you figure out what it is that you
Yes.
want, which is incredibly hard to do, is going to be the massive unlock for your business.
Yeah.
And it's the massive unlock for everybody. It's the reframing, it's the rejecting of the premise and the reframing in a conversation about an opportunity to do some work together, right? Because if somebody shows up and goes, I like a new website, that's what I like. Okay. Well, you don't need to hire Bree or any other expert. If what you need is a new website, you can go to Wix or Stix or Flix or Bix or I don't know what, and fire one of those things up like that. And we're very close, Bree, you tell me, to a point where you can go to an AI and you can puke in a paragraph of things you think you want in your website, and the AI will start building you that website. Yes? Are we?
Oh
We're
yeah,
pretty much
we're
there.
there.
We're there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you just want a website, you don't need to talk to a Bree. And this is the interesting thing. Most people don't know what the fuck they want. Right? And so the people who are successful, certainly the people who are creators who are successful, and everybody has to be a creator going forward, because the only way to be successful going forward is to connect your different, aka your superpower, to delivering value, that is to say, making a difference for others in the new modern AI world. And if you don't know how to connect your different to making a difference for others that's viewed as highly valuable in an AI first world, you're fucked. And if you do, you're on fire. And you figured this out.
Yep. And to bring it all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, finding a superpower in someone as their 20s out of college, I think about anything I can rant about, and it bringing back to the whole Chris Burkhardt video, anything I can rant about for an hour long, if someone lets me, is a signal I have to follow that's going to go and create my POV and bring the right people into my circle and have these massive successes. Because if you don't agree with the things I rant about, we're going to create something you absolutely hate with all of your gut.
Right. You know, the other thing I want to mention to you, Bree, that I love about where you are in your life and what you've achieved so far, and obviously, therefore, the future that you have. We seem to be living at a time of radically reduced expectations for young people. Like, it's fucking okay to live in your parents' basement till you're 40 and to not figure it out till you're 35 and all this stuff, right? And when I was your age, I had just negotiated a deal to sell my company, move from Toronto, Canada to Silicon Valley, and by 28, become the head of marketing for a publicly traded software company. Because I didn't act like a kid. And I didn't have any expectation that I couldn't do it. And so, yes, I had a point of view about marketing. And yes, I had a point of view about software. Yes, I had a point of view about where things were going in the future in marketing. And so that's why the CEO of a publicly traded software company in Silicon Valley hired a kid from Toronto, bought his company, and brought him down to the United States to run marketing for his freaking company, right? And so what I love about you, and it's the same thing that's true about my story, is we hear this all the time. Age is just a number. Well, most of the time we hear that in relation to older people feeling old. Well, you are proof, and so am I, that also applies to younger people feeling young. Just because you're young doesn't mean you can't have a point of view about website design. Look at what you do now at Category Pirates, right? You are the operational lead on, if not all things, most things, right? And you have free reign to go do that, right? And so age is only a number for young people too. There's nothing that says that at 27 you can't be absolutely legendary. As a matter of fact, history would suggest that's exactly what 27-year-olds need to be doing, legendary shit.
Yep, well, I totally agree. I feel like I've lived 5 lifetimes in the lifetime I've already had. Yeah. And I look at some people double my age and I'm like, how have you done next to nothing or have no opinions? Or like, I'm in South Carolina
Say
right
that
now.
louder.
Yeah. I'm in South Carolina visiting family right now, and I have young nieces and nephews, and I went out and we did a one-on-one date with one of my nieces last night. And she's in 8th grade, so she's 13-ish now. So we're talking about life, and I was like, look, if I can tell you one thing, there is a bar that everybody is at down here, especially in South Carolina. They have such an employment problem down here because nobody wants to work the jobs nobody wants to work. And I was like, all you have to do is be a little bit above that bar and you're going to do legendary things. And if you want to do massively legendary things, get way above that bar to your full potential that we all see in you, and you're going to go on to do great success. But the bar is down here. It's so low right now in society. All you have to do is be a little bit above it.
You know, I love that we're talking about this. I don't know if I'm allowed to divulge who, so I'll keep it private. But my wife Carrie and I, we love to eat, which means we love farmers and we love chefs and restaurateurs, and we collect them. Legend, because that's what you need if you love food. And people who love food and farms and people who love to cook and eat, at least to me, are special people. So over the last couple of years, and we've gotten to know a bunch of chefs. Over the last couple of years, we've gotten to know a very big time chef. No question, one of what most people would say is the 100 top chefs in the United States of America. And his family is a family of lawyers. And his father became a very well-regarded judge. And it was expected that he would go into the family business. And I was with him recently talking about exactly this. And back then, because he's a few years older than me, so not the youngest chef in the world, when he started, there's no celebrity chefs. There's no Beat Bobby Flay and Chopped and all millions and diners and drive-ins and dives. And like today, and countless TV shows. What's the TV show that keeps winning the Bear? All these things, right? That have made being a chef like one of the most laudatory and exciting and awesome things you can be. Deservedly so, by the way, as far as I'm concerned. So I love all that chef porn, if you will, that food porn. It's awesome. Anyway, he started long before all this. And when he told his dad what he wanted to be, his dad, the word chef wasn't a word that was used very much. He said, "You want to be a cook?" You know, almost in a derogatory way. And he said to him, "Well, son, if that's what you're going to do, then you must be among the elite in the world, period." And he achieved that goal and then some as one of America's greatest chefs. And he really loves being one of America's greatest chefs. And he's friends with all of the other 100 greatest chefs. And they all love knowing each other and doing stuff together and supporting each other. And he loves bringing up new chefs. Matter of fact, I met a 27-year-old gal who he's mentoring right now as an executive chef. Amazing. And so the point being is that ethic, whatever you're going to do, be elite at it.
Well, and it's you have the path to be elite because it's
yes.
You know what's interesting, Bree, is that it's ostensibly you're in the web design business. What's very clear to me is you're in the ranting and roasting business. Number one,
Yes.
like that's something that's a superpower that you have, right? A la Triumph the Insult Comic Dog and the like, but probably nicer than that, right? But that ability to speak truth, hard truth, in a way that people will are willing to hear it is amazing. The ability to be a lightning strike marketer, an amazing part. Now you've through some hard lessons, you've picked up some risk taking, kind of lessons along the way, right? And kind of how do I have a skeptical eye towards the partners that you invite into your life, including all of us and the like, right? But like, ranting, roasting, and risk taking, and then using that as a superpower to solve the hee-haw in the web design business. Because the technical skills, as you said, you have them, but they're going to get more commoditized through AI anyway with it. The real superpower is the ability to rant and roast in a kind way, but in an undeniable way, as Christopher said. Hey, your website sucks. And the problem is not your web designer. The problem is you. You don't know what you want, and you don't know your category design. You have no idea what business you're in. You have no idea what problem, and I'm speaking this to me in my website. Like, what problem do you solve and for whom? And what is the radically different POV that you offer? And once you can answer those three things, I can design you a legendary website like that drives the outcomes that you're actually looking for. And if you aren't willing to do the hard self-assessment work about, like, who is your super, what problem you solve, what's the radically different POV, what are the stakes for them, and what's the outcome, I'm not interested in working for you. And you do that, like you're actually delivering category design through the Trojan horse of web design. You will have unlimited pricing power. Number one, your unit economics will go through the roof because you will be screening out the hee-haw clients who don't know what they want and don't realize you're not the problem and you're not the reason why they're unhappy. They are the problem. And you're going to get to a place where it's like, you know what, AI is going to do all the work for me, and the hard part is the fun part. I get to rant and rave and poke and say, slap people that I love upside the head and say, you need to be better about knowing who you are. Why are you a missionary or mercenary? No mercenaries here. Like, if we do all of that, you will have an amazing business. And, as Christopher likes to say, we're not far from AI delivering the first kind of $1 billion, solopreneur company. Like, web design, you tell me, Bree, is that historically constrained by labor, and you got to hire people to do it and this and that. If you, coupled with AI on one side, but coupled with this ability to deliver rants, roasting, and raves about the web design and the website and the underlying category design that's fundamentally at the root cause of it, the sky is the limit at how big your business could be.
One thing I just have to add about ranting and roasting and raving is there's a big piece of me also that's like, if I don't rant and roast, people aren't going to get that information. And if they don't get that information, they can't go unlock their own massive rant that leads to an outcome and all of these things. Like, ranting and roasting other people is in and of itself evangelism. Like, that is fully what I'm here to do. And when I don't do that, someone else doesn't get the goodness from it to go do something. At one point I was talking about perfectionism, and this girl was like, I really struggle with perfectionism, because I was ranting about perfectionism. I said, listen to this podcast. It'll change the way you think about perfectionism. And it did, 100%. 10 minutes of her time, perfectionism, whole new different lease on life, and all of that good stuff. And so I like, if you don't rant and rave about these things and have that point of view, you can't go help other people. There's a key part of being a missionary is roasting and ranting about the things that drive you mad.
And just to build on that, the enemy is the status quo. And if you're a missionary and you want to move the world from an old way to a new way, Frodo, as we call them in category design, you are going to be ranting and raving about it. Because I've heard it said that legendary entrepreneurs are visitors from the future telling us how it's going to be. And the delta between the way that it is, that is to say the status quo, and the way the entrepreneur sees the future is so big and so irritating, it makes the entrepreneur batshit, and that's why they're so damn irascible, right? And I experienced this for myself as a category designer. I see category design failure everywhere, and it makes me crazy, right? And I have to talk about it, because if I don't, my head's going to explode.
Yes,
100%.
I agree. 100%.
Well, and the beauty of it, not only is it something that you don't want your head to explode, number one, but it is also something that you can create a little diagnostic about, a little intellectual capital about, right? Where it's, I mean, you tell me, Bree, like, how far away are we from being able to capitalize your aesthetic eye and say, type in a URL and have an agent go through it and say, these, in the same way that Pirate Call has, these are the ways that you format a digital article. Like, these are the things to look for. And these are the telltale signs that you don't actually know what category you're in. Because like, I know for, like, we did this beforehand for stuff that I was doing with Pirate Clint on his medical device businesses, was you'd look up a doctor and there were easy tells, or an orthodontist for that matter, easy tell to see who's the right super consumer or not. The ortho that says, you know what, here are my testimonials, my line is out the door, and if you don't want to work with me, here are 9 other orthos to work for. That's the right ortho you want. Not the ortho who's like, you have to pay me and this and that before you even talk to you, this and whatever else it is, right? Like, we're not far, I assume, from creating an AI-driven diagnostic that you can make money from as you sleep. And then, Bree, in the same way that we talk about marketing as a profit center, for all I know, people might pay you to roast them and their website.
I already know a few designers out there that do audits, and they're all roasting audits of, I'll pay you $500 to roast whatever it is I'm doing. They're already out there.
You want to know how true that can be? One of the greatest CEOs I ever worked with and for is a guy named Bob Howe. And Bob was a senior partner at Booz Allen back in the day. And then he was recruited by George Conrades, who was a direct report to Gerstner at IBM at the time. Conrades had built the services business at IBM, which today is the core business. And as part of the broad services business, they wanted to launch a high-end strategy consulting practice. And so Conrades and Gerstner hired Howe to be the founder of the IBM Strategy Consulting Group. Anyway, that's Bob. And I love Bob. I love all things Bob Howe. And Bob was, is, and always will be a character. And he kind of talks like this, and he has these hands, and he's very expressive. And he goes, I'm going to tell you what the problem here is, and I need to put it in a way that even you can understand. Right? And so he had this very kind of distinctive. Anyway, at one meeting where he wasn't around, I forget what it was, in front of a medium group of people in the company, I got up, and he sort of stood a very particular way, and he used his arms and hands in a very particular way. So I did my Bob Howe impression, sort of like a kid would make fun of a parent when the parent's not around, right? Well, of course, it got back to Bob, and I thought I might be in shit. And we were at this all-company meeting this one time, and it turns out he had seen me do him, and I didn't know he'd seen me do him. And so I'm getting ready to go on, and he says, hey, Lochhead, when you're up there, do me. And so from that point forward, at all hands meetings and all that stuff, I would do 2 to 5 minutes of Bob Howe. And Bob thought it was hysterical. So, it's an interesting thing. If you roast people in the right kinds of ways, they love you for it, including your boss in front of the whole company.
Exactly. You can sense a vibe from someone who has good intentions behind it versus someone who just wants to be mean and be an asshole.
Well, and everybody knew I love Bob. And even if you didn't know I love Bob, when you saw me do the impression of Bob, and by the way, I would do it at investor meetings, like Wall Street analyst days and shit. It was hysterical. I mean, I became known for it, and Bob loved it. Anyway, you could tell I love Bob, of course. So yeah, there is a way to whack somebody. And actually, if you look at comedians today, a lot of the new comedians today, they're most famous for their crowd work.
Yeah.
And they whack people really hard. And I've seen comedians whack people in wheelchairs and people that most people would never whack. And the person they're whacking is laughing their face off. And the comedian's saying the most horrible thing.
Roasting is one of the most legendary forms of comedy. It's when done properly and right. And Bree, like you tell us, like, web design part, that sounds like a lot of work. The roasting part sounded like you had a lot of fun doing it. And so for all we know, your web design business might be 100% roasting. Like, so.
After I started doing all the roasts, I would have friends come up to me and be like, here's a new place you can rant. Like, here's another business. Like, here you go. They were like, yeah. I started creating this whole list of people that would come to me and be like, rant about this place. I was like, oh, goodness. Okay. I have opinions, I guess.
Well, I have the, I think your website is bybreezy.com, right?
.co, unfortunately.
.co, right, .co. I think you ought to think about, rant, some version of Rants by Bree or Ranting and Ravings by Breezy type of a thing. And
that's a good one.
See what that looks like for you, because it certainly is, in the world of Joe Pine and the progression of economic values we've been writing about, sorry to say, web design, that skill is a commodity. It's a serve, but a lot of people offer it. Not a lot of it's different. At the transformation level and at the experience level, is somebody lovingly roasting you in your website? I mean, that's gonna, and what's kind of fascinating? We should tell this to Joe, Christopher, is like, in the CPG work that I've done in healthcare, it's more oftentimes than not a roast done in love is what transforms people. And it's not the, like when I told this story before, when I did the work with Rogaine, the guys who would take action, it was not because their wife or their kid said something. It was the granddaughter who said, Grandpa, you don't have a 4-head, you have a 5-head. And he was like, oh, okay, I should do something about this. And the like, right. And so this idea of yeah, I mean, I just think it's something that's really powerful, and, we're excited to see where it goes. We're super excited to have you on the pirate ship, and you've been awesome. And certainly you put your stamp on the Academy 3.0 already, so they can see that you're awesome. So we're grateful to have you on board. Our Shopify site is on fire, thanks to you, Bree. Thank you for that.
We have
And
merch.
we have merch. And
how do I get?
So
do
exciting.
I have to go on the Shopify site and buy one of everything for myself? Is that the simplest way to get all the merch that I want?
I think so.
What do we have now up there?
Right now, we just have a jacket, a mug, and we have a flask on there as well. But there's like
the
10
flask,
other items coming.
What does it say on the flask?
Well, we have two. We have thinking about thinking is the most kind of important part of thinking, but then we have thinking about drinking is the most important kind of drinking.
Perfect. That's the one I want right there. Thinking about drinking.
Yes.
It's the most important kind of drinking.
I got the thinking about thinking one, but such as it is. So
I do go get some merch for both of us, Eduardo.
That is true. That is true. That's why we are good for.
We're such good partners. I do all.
We average each other out.
It's all about the middle. It's about the spectrum.
That's where you come in, Bree.
Yeah. Find myself in there somewhere.
Well, thanks for sharing your story, Bree. Like Eddie said, we couldn't be more stoked to have you on the pirate ship. And, we didn't really know, Eddie, when we got started that we would have a cast of young characters who would come and play with us and do things with us. And that the category pirate ship would be a training ground for legendary young people. But really excited, Bree, to have you and about what the future holds.
I'm excited to be here. Very fun. Best place to be.
Best place to be. And you look very piratey to me right now.
Thank you. Great. Let me get my hook out.
All right, let's hit stop. How do we do this?